Live. Let's see. Here we are. We're going live. The microphone is hot. Look at that. The tree is in the background. This will be my last live before Christmas. And I want to thank you for being here. This is our monthly live for the Breath Club. So the Breath Club, we are a group that gets together every single month for all kinds of fun things. When you join the Breath Club for as little as $5 a month, you get access to my full catalog of breathwork sessions. So these are breathwork sessions that use various techniques, a lot of different focuses, goals, etc. And ultimately, you get access to the full catalog. This club has been going on ever since 2020. Whenever, you know what happened in 2020, it was a rough year. We've been going ever since 2020, and we've been growing, and we've got people from around the world. So at the next hour, that's 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to get together for the monthly breath party. If you're not a part of the Breath Club, definitely join today. Today, I'm going to be answering questions from Wes, from Gianni, from Barbara, and a few people have been asking me to weigh in on. There's this terrible interview that Wim Hof did about Gaza that's been going around. It's kind of it's been sort of people have been chatting to me about it and asking me for my opinion. So maybe I'll get to that in a little bit. If you haven't joined the Breath Club, today is a great day to join because we are going to be getting into the breath party here in just a little bit. But we are going to first get started with answering Wes's question. Wes is talking. Wes has been part of the Breath Club for quite some time, and he has he's asking me. He says, Jesse, and I'm just going to kind of condense what he said, but he says, I know that chest breathing is related to adding stress, right? So when we do chest breathing, we're adding stress to our system, and so I've heard this is bad for you, and so are there any times when chest breathing is something that isn't bad for you? Is there an appropriate time for chest breathing? And this is a question that I get a lot because in the world of breath work, there's a lot of what I might even consider demonization of chest breathing. Maybe, who knows, maybe I have been a part of this as well, but because when it comes down to it, there are a lot of times when chest breathing is ill-advised. And so what is this all about? What should we be chest breathing all the time? Is there a time whenever we're exercising? When is it appropriate to do chest breathing? Because there is actually a time. Well, let's talk about that today. So thank you for that question, Wes. Let me take a quick sip of water. So there are many different, first of all, the chest breathing, when we tend to call it chest breathing, we tend to be saying, okay, breathing in the chest only. So a lot of times we talk about mouth breathing, we talk about over breathing, we talk about using muscles that are maybe just leaning in on our accessory muscles. We talk about those sorts of things. And the reason why chest breathing has gotten such a bad reputation is primarily because when we're breathing that way, we're usually utilizing only our upper lobes of our lungs. And this is a part of our lungs that have the lowest amount of what we call ventilation perfusion. And that means the gas exchange isn't really that great in your chest. Okay. So and it's all your lungs are all up here. They are in your chest. Let's just be clear about that. But when we're engaging in chest breathing, typically we're engaging mostly with the upper part of our lungs, those upper lobes, and those tend to have the least amount of ventilation perfusion, which means that you have to breathe faster in order to maintain the gas exchange that you need to live. When you do this, when you're breathing faster, you tend to send a message to your unconscious or through your nervous system that, okay, there's stress. There's this stressor that's happening. And here, I don't realize what's going on. And a person gets into what we might consider to be a dysfunctional breathing pattern. So they're relying mostly on their accessory muscles, their chest breathers, we might say. And as a result, we would say you're adding stress to the situation. And I have seen in not only my clients, but like a lot of times whenever I train first responders, I've trained actually one time I was at the Indianapolis Police Academy, and there was I was doing a clinic there, and there was a guy who had such a bad, just such bad breath mechanics that he regularly gave himself panic attacks. So panic attacks is something this guy was suffering from a lot, and it was clear that okay, so yeah, you have a very dysfunctional breathing pattern. You're only adding to your stress. You're only adding to this because you're essentially, what happens is a person will feel an actual stressor, but the problem is they're going through life, they're chest breathing, they're adding stress just through every breath. So they're already here. An actual stressor will come in, and then they're already up here, and then and then that makes them extra self-conscious. So they start to notice, wow, I feel this way, which makes them extra scared, which then leads them to more chest breathing, and then it just kind of spirals out of control. And so we help that particular officer to be. I assume he is an officer now. Hopefully he's keeping his calm. And this is one of the reasons why when we talk about chest breathing, a lot of people demonize chest breathing. So when it comes down to it, Wes's question is there ever a time when you're supposed to have that chest breathing? Is there ever a time? Well, there should never be a time when you're only breathing with your accessory muscles. Okay. So what that means is every breath you take, you should be engaging your primary breathing muscles. Sometimes we call them principal breathing muscles. So your diaphragm, your intercostals, those should be engaged, especially if you're taking deep, full breaths. But for instance, if you're exercising, if you're running and jumping and wrestling and doing jujitsu or playing sports, you want to utilize every bit of alveoli that you can get. And so taking full breaths that include the chest, absolutely a good idea. Absolutely a good idea. Where we see this go awry is when a person is chest breathing or they're shoulder breathing. And they're doing that when they don't really have that high of metabolic load. So using your diaphragm, just slow, low, and through your nose. That's a nice rhyme that we use in the breathwork world. We're just breathing down, lower into the tummy. You should feel the tummy kind of expand out. And that's because your diaphragm is descending. It's displacing some of your organs down there. And that's going to sort of cause your belly and your abdomen, that area, to kind of come out. And then whenever it comes back up, the diaphragm comes back up, and those lungs are coming back up. They're not being pulled by the diaphragm so much. Then, that the tummy is going to come back in because the organs down there have more space. So thank you for that question, Wes. This is something that I think a lot of people, they misunderstand. I have seen people who, they've dabbled in the world of breath. They've dabbled in breath work, or they've at least gotten on Instagram a few times. And then I'll get them on the treadmill and we'll start working out. And it's obvious they're trying not to use anything other than belly breathing. I'm like, okay, no, that's not it. That's not it. There's a time and place for all the different things. If you can do it, like if it's physiologically possible, it's likely that there's a time and place for that action to occur. It's not always the case, I guess, but in most cases, if it's physiologically possible to do, it has a time and place. So mouth breathing is another example of that. And Wes, you might have even been thinking about chest breathing and mouth breathing in conjunction with each other. There is a good time and place to mouth breathe. We typically see mouth breathing in so Brian McKenzie has his conception of the gears. I have sort of maybe a simplified version of that that I've used with my clients. But ultimately, there is when we're working with athletes, especially, we do want to encourage them to really open up nasal breathing. So we really, really, really lean on that nasal pathway. But there does come a time when your metabolic load is at a certain level and a threshold where you do want to switch over to maybe partial nasal, partial mouth. And then eventually there does come a time when the downsides of mouth breathing are superseded by the downsides of not mouth breathing. So you're like, okay, so the best thing I can do right now is mouth breathe so that I can get that gas exchange to go forward. If you want to learn more about that, those are in my books, A Practical Guide to Breathwork and The Language of Breath. If you want to learn more. Thank you so much, Wes, for that question. And if you just are joining us, we're doing the monthly Q&A for the Breath Club. This is a club that it's on Patreon. I started it on Patreon. Sometimes I wonder, if I would prefer having my own app. Nowadays, it's much easier to create your own app. Back in 2020, whenever the Patreon started, we're almost 5 years in, guys. We're almost 5 years. We're going to have to do something special for the 5-year anniversary. So if you're in the Patreon club, start sending me some ideas what we can do for our 5-year anniversary. Wow, that's right around the corner. That's, I think, March is our 5-year anniversary. Whoa, man, we're gonna have to figure something out. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, on Patreon, you can join us. And actually, here at the next hour, we'll be meeting for our monthly breath party. So we get together every month for our breath party. Let's see here. Next question comes from Gianni, and I didn't think I would need to talk about this on this channel, but hey, let's talk about it. Gianni does not live in the United States. He lives in Spain, and he says that he was wondering if if you've heard about these drones in the news. There's these drones in the New England area, and specifically around New Jersey, that are hovering around, and some people have theories as to what they are, what they're not. Right now, we don't really know what they are, and there's all kinds of hubbub about it. It's been in the news like crazy. Gianni he wanted me to talk about it and just talk about. First of all, he wanted to know if I was in that area. No, I am not in that area. I live in an area called Chicago, and so in Chicago, as far as I know, we haven't had any drones. I don't know. If you're in Chicago, let me know. But Gianni wanted me to just maybe weigh in on that, and then also talk about what to do when we feel afraid, right? So when we feel afraid and there's these great mysteries and we don't understand them, they feel much bigger than us. And so Gianni was talking about the drones, but you could relate it to, geopolitics of any kind. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons right now to have fear, right? And they're not bad reasons to have fear, right? So some people talk about us being on the verge of World War III, and some people talk about, there's the verge of the next who knows, the next pandemic could be around the corner, or there could be this. There's always going to be those types of things, and this is one of those times where I do think it's important to learn from the past. We just got out of a crazy time in human history where it was obvious that and we've known this forever. This is something, if you follow me on Instagram, I recently had this post where I had this video of a guy, and for some reason this guy had this like poisonous snake by the tail, and he wouldn't let go. You could tell he much of his brain was being shut down by fear, and he wouldn't let go of this poisonous snake. He had enough thought in his mind to kind of flick it so that the dangerous part of the snake, the fangs, wouldn't get him. But he didn't have the presence of mind just to say, okay, I don't have to hang on to this snake anymore. And I think it's a really good metaphor for what fear does to us. It puts us in a position where it limits what we believe we can do. It makes us feel limited as to what our next step could be. It must be this, or it must be that. It's very difficult when we're in a state of fear to think outside of that. And it's important, Gianni, thank you for caring enough to ask me about this, but also it's important, I think, to understand that fear is a very primal I mean, all of our emotions are very primal, but fear is one of those that really helped our ancestors avoid problems, avoid dangerous places. It helps us in everyday life to avoid things that are dangerous and that have high level of threat. but it also is there to push us into taking some kind of immediate action. So that's important. Emotions are there. That's generally what they do. They push us into immediate action. And that's because the part of your brain where emotions originate, it doesn't really understand time like we understand it like when we think about it right now. Like so you understand at the next hour we're going to get into if you're in the breath club, you're going to get to do a breath work session with me. Okay, that's coming up, and so I'm going to make these plans, and then so our emotional state affects us in a way that it makes the whole world seem as though this is just how it is, and the only thing you can do is take an action in the present moment. And this was really advantageous for our ancestors because danger was right there, right? It was very clear. It was very present. It was very much right in front of you. It could quite literally be the snake, right? And this, like the guy in the video. Go to my Instagram and take a look at it. It's an interesting video to watch. Somebody put somebody put it to a Matchbox 20 song, I think. So it's kind of cheesy and funny to watch too. But the thing is, when we feel fear or when we feel any emotion, but fear is a really powerful one. We feel as though if I don't take an action right now, I'm going to die. Like we may not put that together intellectually. We may not put that together in like a real meaningful way, but that's literally that's what's happening physiologically. That's what's happening deep down, is that your core affect and ultimately your brain's ability to predict its needs for energy, its needs for safety and danger, all those things. Those are all happening instantaneously, pretty much instantaneously. And they're informing your entire organism, all 37.2 trillion cells. This is what we need to do about it because this is the way the world is. And it doesn't do a lot of critical thinking when this happens. So our emotions are amazing because they are the result of insanely complex process at an unconscious level. So about an amount of information that you could, I mean, it would take probably, I mean, who knows how long it would take to really go through it piece by piece consciously. And you're putting all those things together almost instantaneously. When we talk about your brain being this amazing supercomputer, that is the part of you that does that. It's not the part of you that thinks like conscious thinking, like, okay, I'm going to try to use words to describe this pencil. This is my son's pencil, by the way. Obviously, it's got my son's style. Take a look at that. And of course, my son's style is to use the eraser. Do you remember doing this? He's 9. When you were a kid, like he puts his entire body weight on his eraser and goes, "Argh." I'm like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, son. Maybe he gets that from me. We're extreme people in the Coomer family. So, but basically, when it comes down to fear, whether on a original like primal level, our ancestors, it was okay to oversimplify, to not think critically, because if you stopped to think critically, that snake would probably bite you, or you would die of starvation, or like literally you didn't have that much processing to do. um on like, it's not like you had math problems to try to figure things out. So it was to our advantage. And so we have a system that is set up like that, and we're in a world where it's completely different now. So in the modern world, it's to our advantage to stop and think. But our unconscious processes make us feel as though if you stop to think about it, the world's going to end. It also, so here's an interesting factoid, is that it will oversimplify how you feel about everything. So there's a classical there's this classic experiment. Daniel Kahneman did a lot of work on this. Daniel Kahneman, one of the Nobel Prize laureates for his work in conscious and unconscious processing, the research that's been done on it, and he found out that like if you were to ask yourself, am I happy with my life? Right? Am I happy with my life? Right? you would expect that you would contemplate all the aspects of your life, right? You would think about, well, let's see, what would make a happy life, and am I satisfied with all the years? I just turned 44 yesterday. I should have mentioned that on the title. It's my birthday week. Yesterday was my birthday, and so on your birthday, you think, well, have I had a good run, right? It is impossible for you to actually get a clear image of that if you just ask yourself that, because your unconscious mind will change that question based on your current, what we call the core affect. So based on whether you're hungry or whether you have to pee or whether you feel like your needs are being met, sexually, or all these things, it will take a kind of a snapshot of how you feel right now. And it will say, it changes the question. It changes the question to, am I happy right now? Which is interesting, right? So coming back to Gianni's question about these drones, and about the unknown. Of course, the unknown is it's incredibly scary, right? Because it could have monsters. There could be snakes and sharks and alligators and bears and oh my, and all these things. Also, it's incredibly tantalizing because the unknown is where you might find gold, or you might find a happy hunting ground, or a new partner, or a good land or something like that. So it really hooks into us. And it's the reason why everybody's over here in the United States. I don't know. Have you guys heard about these drones? It's the reason why everybody is like, they're glued to their TV and all these things, right? As if if I just keep watching the news, if I just keep watching, eventually, if I'll figure it out. And of course, this leads to rumination. You're thinking about these things. You're having obsessive thinking about things. This is just all tying into ways that our conscious and our unconscious, they sort of have this mismatch with the world that we live in now. So coming back to Gianni, what do you do, right? What do you do in times like this? Well, one thing I would highly recommend is go ahead and stop. And I know it's hard. It's easier said than done, but stop watching the news. Stop watching the news. Or if you just feel like, okay, I don't want to be, left in the lurch, right? Man, back in COVID, I really wish I would have watched the news a little bit more, because suddenly I didn't have any toilet paper, and man, I had some tough times. Did you have tough times without did anybody here have any times without toilet paper? I'd love to hear from you. But maybe you're saying, okay, I don't want to be completely left out. Okay, then here is based on what we understand about ourselves as human beings. And this is the advice that I give to my clients. You're going to need to set a certain time of day where you check the news. Okay. Now, if for some reason there is some kind of, if the aliens come, or if there, is some kind of, WW3, it just broke out, right? If there is something that is actually seriously, insanely huge, there most likely will be some kind of an alarm that happens. I mean, if there's something that you need to know about that much, you might get a notification or two. But other than that, you can probably say it's not going to affect me in every single moment of the day. It's probably going to be something that I can wait till the evening news, or I can wait until this one time of day whenever I have made the decision that I'm going to check the news. This is the one time I'm going to I'll let the news accumulate, so that whenever I look at it, maybe I'll actually find something interesting, and just try that. Okay. Now, having said that, what can you do in the meantime as you're trying to say, okay, I have some fear, and it's okay to be afraid. Fear is not a terrible thing, but we know that it can lead us into making decisions that we may or may not really want to make. So what we can do is we can start to say, okay, I can't change something that is, especially the things that we're talking about now. I can't change the fact that there are these things flying around, right? I can't change the fact that there are wars out there, right? There are things that I cannot change. But the one thing that I can do something about is I can work with my own system here, and I can send back safety signals. I can send back signals within this organism that is me, and I can say, okay, I can try to stay as calm as possible, because if I'm calm, if I'm maintaining as calm of state as possible, then I'm most likely to be in a situation where I can think beyond run or attack, right? Go or no go, right? I can think beyond just whatever the immediate impulse is. And that's why it's not just breath work, right? I think in the world of breath work, we focus a lot on the techniques. And hey, I've made a living doing that. I've written books doing that. I teach techniques. They are important and they're good, but they're useless if you don't develop some kind of rapport with how you feel, right? And I know this is where a lot of people just kind of glaze over. I'm trying to control how I feel. Well, the thing is, how you feel, those are messages from that unconscious part of you. That's a part of you that has a lot of wisdom there, right? It's got basically your collected intelligence, your collected wisdom. Everything that you know is there, and that unconscious part of you sends you impulses, messages, and you feel them physically. And what happens is, because they're so strong and so powerful, a lot of times that just having them will scare us, and it leads us into impulsive behaviors that we regret later. It leads us into missing opportunities that we could have actually benefited from. It leads us into not having the confidence to do the things that we really want to do. It leads us into avoiding being around the people we want to be around because we're afraid. And so getting in touch with that, really getting in touch with how you feel, and that's easier said than done. People, oh, I'll just get in touch with that. I'll just feel how I feel. The reality is, this is why whenever I train breath workers, much of our training is how to teach someone else how to feel. Because most people are either at the whimsy of their emotions, right? So an emotion comes up and they're impulsive, or they've completely figured out how to shut that down. And even the emotions are still firing, they're still speaking, they're still trying to scream and say, hey, even though that's still happening, the person has figured out a way to sort of disconnect, and that's not good either, right? So what we want to do is we want to recognize emotions for what they are. We want to not have to be we want to recognize them for what they are. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're behaving impulsively as a result. We want to respect the fact that our collective wisdom is sending that message. And again, this is all in the science, guys. This is decades of science on what the unconscious you does and what it is. It's sending you those signals, and you can decide, okay, so what am I going to do with this? I'm feeling this. How should I respond? And then that can lead you to better actions, or that can lead you to worse actions. And that is up to you. But there's no magic breath work technique. There's nothing out there that's going to just sort of, make it so that there's, everything's okay. It comes down to taking actions. It's got to be your actions. All right. So Johnny, thank you for your concern. I appreciate you reaching out about that. No, I am in a very, at least as far as we know, I'm in a safe place where we're not really worried about the drones. So, but thank you so much. How are we doing out there? Let me know you can hear me. If you have any questions, I'll be able to get to those here in just a minute. We've got our last question from the Breath Club comes from Barbara, and she's talking about the holidays. So every year, we have holidays for a great reason. These are part of the human experience. It's important to have ceremony, and it's important to have to make things special. If you never make something special, it seems like nothing ever becomes special. So we have holidays, and they do a lot of good for us as human beings. It's part of being a human. And most of us really, we try to get into it. We try to like it. But Barbara was talking about, okay, during the holiday season, it is a high stress time. It's a time that there are a lot of stressors that come up. And so Barbara she's a bit stressed about the stress that she's going to feel. So I I don't blame you, Barbara. And this, a lot of times this happens because you will see family, friends, relatives, loved ones, and you don't normally see them. So when you see them, it's like, okay, so what am I supposed to talk about? How am I? You kind of it's awkward. It's not like, well, we see each other every day. Did you see Sven down by the whatever place? Hey, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for letting me know you hear me okay. So during the holidays, there can be a lot of stress, even though you're around people that you love. In fact, there's this myth. I don't know if you've heard it. Here in the United States, we have this holiday called Thanksgiving, and we all eat turkey on Thanksgiving. Unless you are living in an alternative family that decided to kind of buck the trend. But and sometimes people eat turkey on Christmas and things like that. And there's this old myth that turkey is high in the amino acid tryptophan, and tryptophan is a precursor to basically it makes you feel sleepy. And so the myth is that, well, we all feel really sleepy after having Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner because of all this tryptophan. And the reality is that's not really true. You can, and if you don't believe me, just eat turkey on a regular day. And it doesn't have the same effect. What happens is that we're around our relatives, we're around people that we don't normally see, and it's a stressful experience, and this makes you feel tired. Okay, and that's literally, I mean, there's even been research on this, and a lot of people report holiday stress. So here are some things you can do, Barbara, to alleviate the holiday stress. First of all, we're in the middle of the December challenge in the Breath Club, and that is for good reason. We even have a December 25th breath work session set up for you specifically to put you in the best mood possible, to specifically set up to sort of clear your mind, get you back into that, maybe the peace of the season, right? That the peace of the holiday. And so, there are resources. But one of the things that so what happens is this week is the week whenever I cram in all of my clients so that I can take Christmas week off. I like to try to take Christmas week off and just focus on my family, focus on the holidays and all these things. So this week is so crazy. So if you're trying to get it booked with me right now, I think it's completely booked up. But the thing that we talk about with my clients is ultimately we need to go in with a game plan, and you want to arrive feeling calm. So how can you plan that, right? What can you do to put yourself in that better mood so that just arriving, you're seeing things through the right frame? Because just like we were talking about before, your emotional state will make it will make things seem different. Like it's if you think about like a filter on a camera, or or like whenever you're wearing sunglasses, like if they're like colored shades, everything looks that color, right? It's the exact same way, well, maybe not exact same way, but it's similar to our emotional experience. Our emotional state will color everything. So whenever your aunt or uncle or whomever, your cousin or your brother or sister, whatever, says, "Hey, nice sweater," if you're already in a terrible mood, right? And someone says that, you're like, "Well, what is wrong with my sweater? What, you got something to say?" But if you come in and you're in a good mood, you're like, "Hey, thanks." Right? So the way that we interpret things, it's dependent on our mood. And so you want to make sure to take good care of that before you arrive. The other thing you want to think about is it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to take a walk. It's okay to excuse yourself and maybe do your favorite breathing technique or session. Sniff sniff poo is one of my favorites, right? So if you're not familiar with it, well, hey, if you're not familiar with it, we're going to do some sniff sniff poo at the at the Breath Club party here in just a little bit. But sniff sniff poo is one of my favorites. Excuse yourself to the restroom and sniff sniff poo, right? and I love that. There's so many ways that you could take that. Even Tan May, good to see you, my friend. Nice to see you here. Happy holidays. So giving yourself these a strategy, saying, "Listen, I am not going to go in there and just expect my mood to stay good and just kind of hope for the best. I am going to go in there and understand that my mood influences how I see and interact with everyone that I'm there with. And I'd like to interact with them in a positive way. I'd like to see things in a positive way. So take some responsibility for your mood and just say, and breath work is a fantastic way to do it. There are other things, right? So for instance, make sure you sleep well the night before, and try to avoid alcohol if possible, right? So a lot of times a person will drink a little alcohol during the holidays, and I have nothing against that. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing against drinking alcohol. Maybe, I mean, obviously don't make it, you get the whole spiel, but I have nothing against it. And I will have, I'm sure before the holidays are done, I'm going to have a few beers, right? But if you know that you're going into sort of like a big family gathering, sometimes a person will drink ahead of time to take the edge off, or to sort of loosen up, to have a little bit more loosey goosiness. This is usually a bad idea because you're going into it with a frame that you need the substance to be able to tolerate the people that you love, right? And so now, hey, everyone has their special thing, but in the cases that I have seen, and believe me, I have seen this. Not well, yes, also in my family, we've had this happen, and I've done it too, right? I have done it too. This can cloud your perception. I mean, surprise, surprise, it can cloud your perception just as bad or worse than having a bad mood. Right? You're quite literally changing your state. And the hope is that you're going to be in a much more amorous and gregarious mood. But in many cases, you feel more gutsy and more ballsy. And so you're saying more maybe offensive things. Maybe you're poking fun at your Uncle Joe, who really should have lost the weight by now, right? What is it, Uncle Joe? Every time I see you, you're on a diet. Yeah, I don't think it's working. so sometimes that's the worst thing to do. So just there basically I guess, thank you, Barbara, thank you for this question, because I think a lot of people struggle during this time of year with the holiday stress. So having a strategy and giving yourself breaks, managing your emotions, means more or less being aware of your emotions and understanding that as you experience those emotions, your experience of everything else will be filtered through those emotions. So do your due diligence, take responsibility, and do your best. And at the end of the day, forgive yourself if you don't do as well as you wanted to do in the first place. There's nothing wrong with the fact that you're a human being. Being a human is okay. So do your best, but finding a way to take responsibility for your emotions, take responsibility for your moods. That is my best advice. So I appreciate that, Barbara. Tanmaz says, Tanmaz has been practicing breath work since for a while. I tend to get too conscious about my breath while doing regular tasks. Also, like trying to control my breath manually. Do you think it causes anxiety? Yes. So here's the thing. So conscious breathing, right? Anytime we take conscious control of our breathing, we are putting awareness and focus on something. And this can be amazing. This can cause us to feel light, and it can cause us to feel less stress. But it can also cause us to be hyper fixated on our breathing, and it can cause stress to arise. This is one of the reasons why we have techniques. This is one of the reasons why we have some patterns that are just like, okay, try to focus on doing this so that we're not being hyper fixated and we're not being self-conscious. So Tam May says, thanks for the holiday wishes. Hope you and your family have a great Christmas as well. Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to invite you, if you have not already joined the Patreon Club. The Breath Club is a fantastic place. We have all kinds of fun things. And again, we're going to do something insane. We're going to do something insane. I'm going to try to figure out just something crazy awesome for the month of March of next year. That was whenever we started the Breath Club, and that'll be our 5-year anniversary. So we're going to do something amazing. So I want to thank you for being here. If you have questions, please feel free to send them my way. You can go to jessecoomer.com. But we are going in about 20 minutes. We're going to start this month's breath party. So I hope to see you there. This will be the last one of the year, and it's always a really special one. So thanks again for being here. Hope you have a great Christmas and holiday season. Happy New Year. We'll see you next month.